always believed family was supposed to be your safe space, the one place you could fall apart and still be held. I clung to that belief for most of my life, until my own sister turned my wedding day into her battlefield. My name is Portia de Rossi, 32 years old. I was engaged to Jason, the love of my life, after 4 years of navigating life together. The highs, the heartbreaks, the ordinary Tuesday dinners. We were planning our wedding for September 17th, a date I had dreamed about since I was a little girl, twirling in a pillowcase, pretending it was a gown. It was my day. At least it was supposed to be, until my younger sister Hannah decided she would get married on that exact same day. Yes, the same day. It all started one calm evening in March. Jason and I had just returned from dinner and were going over final details for our invites when my mom called. "Sweetheart, you're not going to believe this. Hannah's engaged." I smiled. "That's amazing news. I'll call her to congratulate her." Mom hesitated. "There's something else. She's thinking of getting married on September 17th, too." I froze. "What?" "She says it's a pretty date and, well, she doesn't see the issue." "She doesn't see the issue?" I repeated, stunned. "She knows we picked that date months ago. The venue's booked. Invitations are printed." I tried to talk her out of it, but she says it's just a date, that you don't own it. I ended the call, my heart pounding. I dialed Hannah right away. "Tell me it's not true," I said. "You're not really choosing the same wedding day as me?" "Why not?" she said, completely casual. "It's a great date." "Hannah, come on. You've known our wedding date for months. You were there when we booked the venue." "So what?" she said, shrugging off my disbelief. "People can choose the same birthday. Why not the same wedding date?" "You're joking." "Nope, I already told Mom and Dad. They're fine with it." Of course they were. Hannah didn't just stumble into this. She deliberately chose that date. And suddenly I realized something awful. My sister wasn't celebrating her love story. She was hijacking mine. I told Jason what happened. He sat quietly listening, his jaw tight. "Do you want to reschedule?" he asked gently. "No," I said. "She wants this to become a competition. She wants us to fight. I won't let her turn my wedding into a reality show." Jason smiled and kissed my forehead. "That's the Portia I know." But deep down it hurt. This wasn't just about a date. This was about a pattern. Growing up, I was always the one who paved the way. The one who studied hard, stayed out of trouble, helped Mom in the kitchen, drove Hannah to her rehearsals. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for applause. I just did it. And Hannah? She was the golden girl, the one who always got a second chance, even when she didn't deserve a first. I had spent years ignoring the favoritism, but now she was trying to steal my wedding day. And my parents, surprise, were standing on the sidelines, silently watching her do it. That week was exhausting. Mom called again, this time more forceful. "Portia, you're the older sister. Maybe it would be easier if you were the one to change your date." "What?" "It's just a thought. You could do yours in October or even next spring." "No." "Don't be so stubborn. This is family we're talking about." I laughed bitterly. "Then why is family always asking me to give up everything?" She hung up. I sat on the floor, phone still in my hand, wondering how something so joyous, my wedding, had become something so lonely. Jason saw me breaking. So he booked a 3-day trip to a quiet seaside resort. No phones, no plans, just us. I remember sitting by the ocean, my feet buried in the cool sand, watching the waves roll in. "I think I want to cancel," I said quietly. Jason turned to me, his eyes full of worry. "Cancel the wedding?" "Not us," I said quickly, "but maybe we wait or elope or do it next year." "Portia, I don't want my day to be compared. I don't want people choosing sides. I don't want pictures online of my sister in white, the same day I'm in white." He took my hand. "Then don't let it be about them. Make it about us. You and me, that's all we need." I looked at him, my partner, my anchor, and for the first time in weeks I exhaled. "We're going to do this," I said, "but on our terms." When we got back, I began planning quietly. No more hotel ballroom. No massive guest list. We booked a private garden outside the city. It had soft hanging lights, wooden benches under maple trees, and a vintage barn where we could host a small reception. The place looked like something out of a fairy tale. It felt like us. I trimmed the guest list down to 30 people, just the ones who mattered. We asked guests to not post photos online. We weren't hiding. We were protecting something sacred. Then, 1 week before the wedding, I got a message from my aunt. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I won't be able to attend your ceremony. Your mom said the family would be going to Hannah's wedding. They've rented a shuttle bus." "A shuttle bus?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because, of course they had. They chose her. Again. They wanted the glitz, the hotel buffet, the 200-person guest list. They didn't care that I was the one getting married first, that I had chosen that date out of love, not strategy. But I wasn't going to let their absence define my joy. I had Jason. I had our closest friends. I had a garden full of sunlight and vows waiting to be spoken. And that was enough. The morning of our wedding was quiet, peaceful even. The sun filtered gently through the white linen curtains of our Airbnb near the garden venue. Jason was out getting coffee and pastries. I sat on the edge of the bed in my robe, staring at the dress hanging by the window. No chaos. No screaming relatives. No last-minute arguments about table seating. Just me, a deep breath, and the soft promise of a new chapter. Our florist, Lily, arrived early to set up the ceremony arch. She brought lilacs, eucalyptus, and white peonies, my favorites. She hugged me as she arrived. "You look so calm," she said, smiling. "I am," I replied. "I think this is the first time in a month I've felt that." A few hours later, my best friend Paige arrived to help with my hair and makeup. While she curled a piece of my hair, she asked softly, "Do you know what's happening on the other side of town today?" I smiled faintly. "I assume Hannah is having the wedding of the century?" "She booked a ballroom at the Empress Hotel," Paige said. "Last I heard, your mom was wearing navy blue and giving a toast." "Of course." I nodded but didn't react. I had prepared for this. I had accepted it. Paige paused. "Portia, you don't have to pretend this doesn't hurt." "It does," I said, "but I'm not giving them any more space in my head. Not today." At 4 o'clock sharp, Jason arrived at the garden. He looked like a dream in his navy suit and light gray tie. We did a private first look before the ceremony, just the two of us in the orchard behind the barn. When he turned around and saw me in my dress, his mouth opened slightly. No words came at first. Then he said softly, "You look like forever." I almost cried, but I didn't want to ruin my eyeliner. We laughed, hugged, and stood in silence for a moment. Then he kissed my forehead and said, "Let's go get married." The ceremony was short, sweet, and filled with love. My friend Gina played violin as I walked down the aisle. The guests, all 30 of them, stood and smiled. Some cried. Jason's uncle officiated, telling stories of how we met, how we grew, how we found each other again and again. We wrote our own vows. Jason's were simple and true. "You're not just the love of my life. You're the safe place I didn't know I needed." Mine were a little shakier. "You've shown me what it means to be chosen, not out of obligation, but out of love." We kissed, everyone clapped, and for the first time in months, I felt whole. At the reception, we served dinner under the twinkle lights. No assigned seating, no head table, just laughter, clinking glasses, and shared stories. Halfway through the night, Paige stood to make a toast. "I've known Portia since we were 10, she said, "and I've never seen her glow like this." She paused. "I also know that life hasn't always been fair to her. Some people walk through fire and come out bitter. But Portia, she came out brighter." I couldn't stop the tears that time. Jason reached for my hand under the table. He didn't let go all night. Later, as the last of the guests headed home and the music faded, Jason and I stayed behind in the garden. We danced, just the two of us, under a string of lights and a moon that looked like it was smiling just for us. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not letting them steal this from you." I laid my head on his chest. "They tried, but they lost." The next morning, I woke up to a phone full of unread messages. Apparently, something had gone wrong at Hannah's wedding. "Very wrong," Paige called. "You're not going to believe this." "What happened?" "Her groom left." I sat up in bed. "What?" "Left. As in, didn't show up for the ceremony. Guests were seated, music was playing, and he never walked down the aisle." "What?" She was humiliated. People were whispering. Your mom had to make some weird speech about delays while they stalled for 45 minutes. Then eventually, everyone went home. I was stunned. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just sat there. Jason walked in with coffee. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Hannah's wedding didn't happen." He blinked. "You serious?" "He left her at the altar." We sat in silence for a moment. "I'm not sure how I feel about that," I said honestly. Jason nodded. "It's okay not to feel anything. You don't owe her your emotions." Later that afternoon, I got a call from my mom. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Call me, please." Jason looked at me. "You don't have to." But I did. I called her back. Her voice was frantic. "She's devastated, Portia. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't spoken. Please, just talk to her." I sat quietly. "After everything she did," I said finally, "you still expect me to comfort her?" "She's your sister. And I was your daughter. When did you ever choose me?" That shut her up. "Portia, please." I'm not gloating. I'm not celebrating what happened. But I'm not rescuing her either. I'm not the villain here, and I'm done playing the extra in her story. And I ended the call. That evening, Paige sent me a photo from our wedding. It was me and Jason standing under the arch, surrounded by soft lights and open hearts. She captioned it, "Real love doesn't need a spotlight. It shines anyway." I saved it, and for the first time since everything began, I felt peace. Not because Hannah got what she deserved, but because I did. It had been 5 days since the wedding. 5 quiet days filled with long walks, leftover cake, and sleepy mornings wrapped in Jason's arms. I had wanted to stay in that peace forever. But life never lets you rest for long. Hannah called. She didn't leave a voicemail, but her name flashing on my screen was enough to punch the air out of my lungs. I stared at it. Let it ring out. A few minutes later, a text came in. "Can we talk?" I showed Jason. "You don't owe her anything," he said gently. "But if you want closure, I'll be here when you get back." So I replied, "Tomorrow, noon at the park." It was warm the next day, too warm for fall. I sat on a bench near the fountain with a to-go coffee and sunglasses I didn't really need. Hannah arrived 10 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. Her hair was pulled into a low bun, and she looked smaller somehow, worn out. "Hi," she said, sitting down beside me. I didn't say anything. "I guess you've heard what happened?" I nodded. She fidgeted with the strap of her purse. "It wasn't what you think. I didn't plan for him to leave." "I didn't say you did." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're angry." "Of course I am." She swallowed. "I didn't mean to ruin your day." I turned to her. "That's where you're wrong. You did. You knew exactly what you were doing when you chose my wedding date. You didn't stumble into it. You hijacked it. You tried to compete." She opened her mouth. "I gave you the benefit of the doubt for years, Hannah," I cut in. "Every time Mom gave you the bigger slice, every time she excused your behavior and expected me to be the understanding one, I let it slide. But not this time." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I wanted it to be about me for once," she said. "It always was," I snapped. She blinked. "You don't realize it, but you've always had the spotlight, and I've always been the one holding the flashlight." She wiped her face. "He left me, Portia. I thought we were solid. I thought—" Her voice broke. "I thought I was finally getting something just for me." I looked away. "Then maybe now you understand what it's like to be blindsided by someone you trusted." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." The words floated in the air, fragile as a soap bubble. I didn't reach for them. I just let them sit there. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she stood. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, "but thank you for listening." And she walked away. Jason and I went out for dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just pizza and a local microbrew. "I met with Hannah," I said, picking the olives off my slice. "How'd it go?" "Hard, sad, weird." He nodded. "Did it help?" I thought about it. She apologized. And for once, she didn't make herself the victim. That's new. "Do you believe her?" "I believe she's hurting. I don't know if that's the same thing." Jason squeezed my hand across the table. "You did your part." 2 days later, my mom called. Again, I ignored it. She left a voicemail this time. "I know I wasn't fair to you, Portia. I'm sorry. I miss you. Please let me come over and talk." I played it on speaker while folding laundry. Jason paused. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I said honestly. So I called her back. She came over with homemade banana bread and a stiff posture like she was preparing for court. I served tea and sat across from her at the dining table, arms crossed. She cleared her throat. "I failed you," she said. "No argument here." She sighed. "I was so focused on keeping peace between you and Hannah that I didn't notice I was putting all the weight on you. You raised me to accommodate everyone else," I said, "and I raised her to believe she didn't have to." I blinked. That was more honesty than I expected. She looked older than I remembered. "Telling you to move your wedding date? That was cruel, and I'm sorry." I swallowed. "Thank you. I'm not asking for a reset, just a chance to rebuild." I sat back. "On one condition." She nodded. "I don't want to be the quiet one anymore, the one who bends so others don't break. I want to be allowed to take up space in this family." She smiled softly. "It's about time." We invited her over the following week for dinner. Nothing grand, just tacos and stories about childhood pranks. She cried when she saw a wedding photo of me and Jason on the wall. "I miss so much," she whispered. "You were invited," I reminded her. She nodded. "And I chose wrong. But she was here now. And that meant something." Weeks turned into months. Fall became winter. Jason and I spent Christmas at home with a few close friends and my mom. Yes, my mom. She brought a photo album filled with old pictures of me and Hannah, from tree forts to graduation gowns. We laughed more than we cried. At one point, she pulled me aside and handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a locket. It had a photo of me and Jason on one side and a note tucked on the other. To the daughter who taught me grace, I see you now. I hugged her, and I meant it. As for Hannah, we text occasionally. Small things, pictures of Ezra, our cousin's baby. A meme she knew would make me laugh. We're not close, we're not pretending, but we're something, and that's enough for now. Spring came quietly. No big events, no dramatic family blow-ups. Just sunlight filtering through our kitchen windows, coffee with cinnamon, and a garden Jason and I started together in the backyard. Life had stopped rushing, and I had stopped chasing. For the first time in my life, I felt settled. And that peace didn't come from everything being perfect. It came from knowing that I no longer needed approval to feel valid. I began writing again. Before all the wedding chaos, I had been working on a collection of short stories, fictional pieces inspired by family, childhood, memory. After everything happened, I had put them away. Too raw, too close. But now, with a new clarity and distance, I picked up where I left off. I changed the protagonist's name. I gave her a backbone. I let her stop apologizing. And every word I typed felt like one more piece of myself reclaimed. Jason would walk past the office, peek in, and smile. You're glowing when you write, you know that? I didn't respond. I just kept writing. One evening in late April, I got a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not a wedding invite. A real letter. It was from Aunt Renee, the only relative who hadn't chosen sides during the wedding fiasco. She'd watched quietly from a distance, declining both my wedding and Hannah's, and sending us each the same polite card. I hope your heart is full, wherever you are. Her letter now was short. Portia, I heard about what happened. I've been thinking about you a lot. I want you to know, I've always seen you, even when others didn't. It takes courage to let people go without bitterness. I'm proud of you. Love, Renee. I sat with that letter for a long time. No tears this time. Just a full, steady feeling in my chest. I had been seen. Really seen. And that was more healing than 1,000 apologies. In early May, Jason and I hosted a garden dinner for our close friends. No big occasion, just to celebrate being alive and being surrounded by people who chose each other with kindness. Mom came. She brought fresh bread and a bouquet of tulips she said reminded her of me. Hannah didn't come, but she sent a pie and a card with a single sentence. I hope your evening is full of light. That was enough. I wasn't angry anymore, but I also wasn't rushing to rebuild something broken beyond recognition. I had learned that forgiveness isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes it's just the quiet act of letting go of who someone was and accepting who they might never be. The dinner was magical. String lights above us, laughter echoing off the garden fence, stories and memories passed like bread around the table. Jason stood up and toasted me near the end. I married Portia because she's brilliant and beautiful, but I stayed in love with her because she never lets the worst parts of life make her bitter. She turns pain into purpose every time. I smiled, a lump forming in my throat. Then Paige chimed in with a grin, and she throws a mean taco night. Everyone laughed. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dramatic, but it was everything I had ever wanted. That night, after everyone left, Jason and I stood barefoot in the grass holding hands. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded, more than okay. We looked up at the stars. I thought about all the versions of myself I had shed in the last year. The Portia who always played peacekeeper. The Portia who shrank to fit inside others' comfort. The Portia who thought love had to be earned by sacrificing herself. She was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, softer, realer. Jason pulled me close. Let's keep building this life, he whispered, exactly the way we want to. I rested my head against his chest. And in the stillness of that night, I made myself a quiet promise. Never again would I give away my joy to make someone else feel whole. From now on, my joy was mine to keep, and I would protect it, fiercely. Epilogue. 1 year later. It's been a full year since the wedding that wasn't, and the wedding that truly was. Jason and I took a trip to Italy last fall, something we'd dreamed about for years. We walked hand in hand through cobbled streets, ate too much pasta, drank wine under grapevines, and finally took that picture of us kissing on a cliff at sunset. It now hangs in our hallway, right next to a small framed quote that reads, "You don't have to shout to be heard, you just have to stop whispering." I still write. My book of stories is nearly finished. And the main character? She's finally learned that taking up space isn't selfish. It's necessary, because no one else gets to write your story for you. Not a sister, not a parent, not even your past, only you.